Since the coronavirus was first identified in Wuhan in December, Chinese authorities have punished doctors for raising the alarm, detained citizen journalists for reporting on the epidemic, and removed social media posts critical of the government's handling of the crisis. Governments should respect the rights to freedom of expression and access to information.
Human Rights Watch has a track record of documenting violations of older people's human rights. With the coronavirus outbreak, we will be vigilant in monitoring to ensure governments put their rights at the center of their responses and do not undermine them.
Nursing homes are the single biggest fear in all of this. Vulnerable people in one place. It is the feeding frenzy for this virus.
I'm concerned for her. I'm concerned at the possibility that they'll bring COVID-positive patients into the nursing home.
Kulapin's concern comes on the heels of an order from the New York Department of Health that no resident shall be denied entry to a nursing home solely based on a confirmed or suspected COVID-19 diagnosis. It also forbids nursing homes from requiring a hospitalized person be tested before being entered or re-entered.
Staggering numbers of coronavirus deaths at New York State nursing homes are prompting questions for Governor Andrew Cuomo over whether a policy he put in place was a factor. Nursing home executives reportedly called the March 25th directive a death sentence for residents. It prohibited facilities housing the most vulnerable from turning away patients infected with coronavirus and also prevented facilities from requiring COVID tests prior to admission. After New York State logged some 1,700 coronavirus deaths among nursing home residents, Governor Andrew Cuomo was asked if the policy was a mistake.
What can you do better going forward? I don't know. It's something we're studying. I don't know. It's something we're studying. I don't know. It's something we're studying.
The March directive met strong opposition from the American Medical Directors Association, who said the day after it was issued, unsafe transfers will increase the risk of transmission in post-acute and long-term care facilities, which will ultimately only serve to increase the return flow back to hospitals, overwhelming capacity, endangering more healthcare personnel, and escalating the death rate.
And now, the death knell.
Some facilities reportedly had no positive cases or deaths before the directive was in place, but the state reported yesterday an addition suspected to be coronavirus related, bringing the total to more than 4,800 since March 1st. Cuomo suggested.
So, surely he remembers where he actually strong-armed the nursing homes and even threatened them if they did not take the coronavirus patients, even though they protested.
Attorney General investigation. But those are the rules. They get paid to take care of a resident, and they have to do it in accordance with state rules. And if they don't, we will take appropriate action.
So he's going to accept responsibility then, right? It was him that signed the executive order. He even threatened the nursing homes if they didn't follow it. And now we know 100% certainty, despite warnings from various doctors' associations and groups. I thought this was about the science. Surely he's going to accept responsibility for what he did and not try to pass the buck to the nursing homes, right?
Bringing the total to more than 4,800 since March 1st. Cuomo suggested Tuesday nursing homes had some intake discretion, which was not outlined in the policy.
They make a determination if they can provide the best care for the person.
We're shocked that all these residents started dying after we forced them to take patients among the most vulnerable people. By the way, we're going to arrest you if you leave your house. So he claimed that they had some discretion if they couldn't take care of them after they took them and people were already exposed. Then they could send them back to the hospital again, because that makes a lot of sense. And yet there are absolutely no guidelines for how they're supposed to follow these orders, which he threatened them if they did not follow. So if this isn't about protecting the vulnerable, if we're actually just arresting all the healthy people which are stuck in their homes and not building up herd immunity and destroying the economy, but we're actually doing the opposite and working to expose the elderly instead of protecting them, then what is all this really about?
Those who closely follow the international affairs have probably noticed that China has long been labeled a human rights violator, especially in recent years, as the country has gradually making its voices heard on the global stage. Whether it's about the traffic surveillance cameras or the much politicized issues in China's Xinjiang region, the Asian powerhouse has long been scrutinized. Not surprisingly, Western criticism has followed the outbreak of the novel coronavirus. The Chinese government announced a lockdown of Wuhan, the epicenter of the epidemic. Cities like Beijing, Shanghai simultaneously activated their primary public health safety alerts, meaning people should remain under home quarantine, especially those who had returned from Hubei province. Residential compounds should set up checkpoints at entrance gates and record the body temperature of all residents entering and leaving the community, thereby minimizing the chance of further transmission. In Wuhan, 2 hospitals were built to accommodate more than 2,000 of severe cases. A number of public venues were converted into medical facilities to care for thousands of mild cases. One representative from each household is allowed to go out for groceries every other day to make sure they are fully stocked with daily necessities. Also, temporary traffic restrictions are in place to reduce movement throughout the city. Is this a sacrifice? Yes. Will this help stem the deadly outbreak? Yes. And the World Health Organization offered their supporting voices.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there's, quote, enormous evidence the COVID-19 pandemic originated in a lab in Wuhan, echoing remarks made last week by President Trump. Speaking to ABC's This Week on Sunday, Pompeo said it's not the first time that the world has been exposed to viruses as a result of failures in a Chinese lab, adding that China has had its history of running substandard labs. Now, despite being highly critical of China's handling of the matter, Pompeo declined to comment on whether he believes the virus was released intentionally. Last Thursday, President Trump also claimed he had seen evidence that the virus had originated in a Chinese lab.
The World Health Organization says it's working with global leaders and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop vaccines, tests, and treatments for the coronavirus.
My full-time work at the foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds, about the things that we need to invent and deliver to help the poorest 2 billion live better lives. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. We could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. We could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. And so what we're going to have to do at a global scale is create a new system.
This is a landmark collaboration to accelerate the development, production, and equitable distribution of vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics for COVID-19.
But experts say President Trump's efforts to isolate the U.S. from the WHO could slow down those efforts.
It delays things. It confuses things. It creates unnecessary division and tension in the scientific enterprise. Americans pay a price for that.
Today, I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted.
A senior administration official told Newsy America's world-leading scientists are working hard on a COVID-19 vaccine. We welcome serious efforts to assist in that endeavor and look forward to learning more about the World Health Organization's proposal. It's not just the funding. According to the Washington Post, the Trump administration has directed the State Department to remove any mention of the WHO from virus fact sheets, and an internal memo from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo instructed workers to cut out the middleman when it comes to public health initiatives. A State Department spokesperson told Newsy, "Our action in no way diminishes U.S. leadership on global health matters, including the current COVID crisis. We have ample ability to provide aid ourselves or through other partners to fight the pandemic, and we will continue to do so." Meanwhile, the House Foreign Affairs Committee has launched an investigation into the Trump administration's decision to halt funding to the WHO. In a letter to Pompeo, Committee Chairman Eliot Engel called the move a political distraction from the White House's own response to the pandemic. World Health experts like Morrison are hopeful Senate Republicans will work with Democrats to reverse President Trump's decision.
Republican senators in particular, over the last 3 years of the Trump administration, have been very important at critical moments when foreign assistance has come under attack from the White House.
For now, though, the WHO will continue to work with American businessman Bill Gates, who describes his foundation's role in helping fund vaccine efforts in a blog post. Every additional month that it takes to get the vaccine is a month when the economy cannot return to normal. There is a lot of discussion among governments, the World Health Organization, the private sector, and our foundation about how to organize these efforts. He says the goal is to pick 1 or 2 vaccines and vaccinate the entire world. He says the goal is to pick 1 or 2 vaccines and vaccinate the entire world. He says the goal is to pick 1 or 2 vaccines and vaccinate the entire world.
Religion and religious actors and faith-based organizations are culture creators. And so they have both the catalytic and a transformative role in creating new cultures of equality, plurality, and peace.
So I think that the premise of that question is a little bit challenging for me on its face, because it assumes that religious actors have a different contribution to make from others. Whereas I think the Agenda 2030 is an example of a new development paradigm, and the degree of its success will depend on the degree to which all actors, religious and non-religious, are able to contribute to its fulfillment. So I think it will take quite a bit of humility, especially on the part of religious actors, to essentially detach themselves from various forms of dogma and other notions of progress, and see how they can direct those energies into an agenda that is religion neutral. That is, it does not invoke the name of God or heaven on earth, though in many senses it is trying to achieve the exact same objectives. As such, religious actors, their primary responsibility, as I would see it, is to humbly conceive of their energies and endeavors in the light of a unifying paradigm that all the world's countries have agreed to.
I think one really important contribution that religious leaders, faith actors can make towards the 2030 agenda is in translating what is essentially a secularized agenda to something like 80% of the world's population that adhere to a faith. Faith actors who are also themselves from marginalised groups, marginalised for perhaps their gender or sexual orientation or their race or a disability, also could play a really crucial role in making sure that no one is left behind.
That is important for religious communities and religious actors to go through transformation of their own institutions as places where the equality, justice, and social justice are main values in their institutions. Even if we take it for granted that religious communities do that, I think we know that in several occasions some of our religious beliefs and even theological reflections in a way justify violence against the other, or discrimination against women, or exclusion of children and young people. So going through this transformation and also working together with other faith communities in interfaith collaboration I believe are key examples of how not to leave no one behind as a pillar for the 2030 agenda.
And joining us now is Rabbi David Seth Kirshner of the Temple Emmanuel in Bergen County, New Jersey, Imam Omer Bajwa, chaplain at Yale University, and Pastor Raymond Muniz from Christ Community Church, also in New Jersey. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me tonight. Imam Bajwa, I'd like to begin with you. You are, as we said in the open, all of you are facing new challenges. Your congregants are facing anxieties in the manner in which they never have. How are you reaching your community, Imam, and what has been your message?
Well, thank you for inviting us all tonight. I would say two things. One is that we've moved everything online. So we have all our teachings, all our sermons, our community classes have all been moved to Zoom. And that's just the nature of, I think, so many of our religious communities across the board have moved online and doing things virtually. Second is that, colleagues are going to share. So much of this is about pastoral care and spiritual mentorship and, sort of virtual community building, right? Making ourselves as available as we can to the community, but knowing that what we as religious leaders bring is physical presence and spiritual presence, but we need to sort of reimagine what that looks like now.
Rabbi, I'm wondering how you've dealt with your congregants who may have had relatives, friends, family who've passed away or become sick from this virus, how you've had to deal with that.
That's been the most excruciating part of what we're doing right now, Scott. To see congregants who are in pain that you can't hug, you can't hold them. I've officiated at too many COVID funerals already, and to be limited to one or two family members has been incredibly painful. The converse of that is we've been able to Zoom the service. So we've had 100 households join us at the cemetery or for the memorial Shiva, which has really buoyed the spirits of those who are grieving.
Pastor Muniz, I turn to you. I'm wondering how you've had to change perhaps your message to your congregants in what is a time of obvious despair, but yet this is, for your community, the holiest week of the year.
It is, and crises are not, new to us. People of faith have had to face crisis from generation after generation. So this is just another phase in our struggle, in our faith, in our walk. And I would say that for me, it has changed. Our church has evolved. We used to be a church that would be encouraging people to come to the church, and we would do everything possible to attract the people. That's no longer accessible. Now we need to make ourselves available. And so,
Imam, what has your message been?
Very much to what my colleagues have said, very much that God is merciful and God is in control. This is a test. This is a test. This is a test. This is a tribulation that the world is going through, and we'll see those people and those communities that rise to the occasion and offer their services of assuaging the anxiety and the fear that the world is going through, and that are serving human beings. And we have extraordinary healthcare workers and professionals and so many people, essential workers on the front lines. And it's really about bringing humanity together to deal with the challenge.
2 weeks ago, all places of worship were forced to close their doors in the battle against coronavirus.
We're reaching out to our community through doing ceremonies online. Some of the challenges are getting people onto the technology, people who aren't used to it.
Our Father.
With big religious festivals coming up, this is going to be a busy week. To celebrate Passover, Rabbi Robin will be conducting an online ceremonial dinner to fellow Jews.
This Passover is going to be completely different to any other we've ever had.